Alright, everyone, welcome to day 7 of Star Trek Timber 2016. Let's start things off with Wolf in the Fold. On Stardate 3614.9, the Federation starship USS Enterprise arrives at Argelis II, a planet with a Middle Eastern cultural influence primarily dedicated to peaceful hedonism. Ship's Captain James T. Kirk, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Leonard McCoy, and Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott beam down for some therapeutic shore leave focused on Mr. Scott, who is recovering from a concussion caused by an explosion in the engine room. Scotty is picked up by Kara, an attractive Argalian dancer, and leaves the club with her. As the two remaining crewmen make their way through a fog-filled evening to another club, they hear a scream, grope their way through the fog to find the dancer dead on the ground and Scotty standing in a state of shock against a nearby wall, clutching a bloody knife. Scotty is detained and interrogated by Mr. Hengist, administrator from Rigel 4 and head of Argalius' police operations, who informs the captain that the outlook for Scotty is grim. Jarrus, the prefect of the planet, intervenes and bids his wife, Cybo, and play the Argalian empathetic contact to determine the truth. Descended from the ancient priestess of Argalius, Cybo has telepathic skills. While she prepares for the ritual, with consent of the prefect, Lieutenant Karen Tracy, an Enterprise medical specialist, beams down with a psycho tricorder, interviews Scott, and is murdered. The evidence again points to Scott, though he is found unconscious at the scene. Cybo proceeds with the empathic contact ritual. Similar to a sentence, participants hold hands and Cybo begins her search for the truth. As light from the altar fades and the room darkens, Cybo states that there is evil here, monstrous, terrible evil, hater of all that lives, a hunger that never dies, and his name, Kesla Boratus, a hunger that never dies. Red Jack! Red Jack! The room becomes totally dark, and Cybo screams. When the lights come back on, Scott is holding Cybo's dead body. Understandably, the prefect is upset by his wife's murder, but agrees to have everyone present during the ritual, including Hengist himself, Kara's father, and Morla, her fiancé, beamed aboard the Enterprise, where the ship's computer can be used to determine if Scott is guilty. However, he warns Mr. Scott that the Argalian penalty for murder is death by slow torture, and if the ship's computer proves his guilt, he will be subjected to it. Kirk has everyone beamed back to the Enterprise so that the ship's computer can analyze Mr. Scott's testimony of innocence. The computer confirms that both Scotty and Morla know nothing about the murders. Scott insists, however, that he felt the presence of a cold, evil being during Cybo's empathic contact ritual. The computer verifies he is telling the truth. Kirk decides to run the names spoken by Cybo through the computer. The machine affirms the Beatrice of Rigel 4 and Kesla of Deneb 2 are names given to a serial killer of women on those worlds. Don't identify Red Jack as Red Jack, one name given to the elusive 19th century Earth serial killer known as Jack the Ripper. Suddenly, suspicion shifts from Scott to Hengist, not least because the murder weapon was made by the hill people of the Argus River region of Rigel 4, and Hengist took up his post on Argalis shortly after the last murder took place on Rigel 4. Hengist attempts to flee. Captain Kirk subdues him with a single punch. Dr. McCoy examines him and announces, "He's dead, Jim." However, the River entity jumps from Hengist's body into the Enterprise's central computer, from which it can control the ship. The Ripper entity gets onto the ship's public address system and begins threatening the crew to generate the fear it feeds on. Kirk fights the attempt of the Ripper to terrify his crew by ordering Dr. McCoy to administer tranquilizers to everyone. Spock drives the entity out of the computer by ordering it to be applied to its last decimal place, which sucks the computer into an endless loop, since that mathematical ratio is unbounded. The entity then jumps back into the apparently dead body of Mr. Hengist in the briefing room. Scott's interrogation had taken place, and Kirk subdues Hengist, and Spock hits him with a dose of tranquilizer, rendering the Ripper entity helpless. Kirk carries Hengist to the transporter room, and Spock uses the transporter to beam the entity into space at maximum dispersion. Spock knows that even if Red Jack survived the dispersion beaming, each individual part of it will drift helplessly through space until the creature finally perishes. The threat from Jack the Ripper is ended for good. With the crew on tranquilizers, Kirk returns through shortly, with Spock, McCoy, and Scotty in tow. Well, pretty interesting episode, I should say. So, I give Wolf in the Fold 3 warp cores out of 5. Well, join me in a little bit for the highlight of season 2, the trouble with troubles. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.